Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 13th. Not Friday, it's a Thursday, but that's okay. So we're approaching contract rollover for the ES. That's going to happen, Friday the 19th. So you're going to start to see that transition flip over on your futures contracts. We'll move to the next dated contract. And like I was talking about, the basing going across, we started to see a bit of the short increase going through right as we're reaching the 76% with the rising cyan. But at the same time, we still have rising red, and short-term buyers turned around just in time to keep that support active. We came all the way down to the bottom of it here, but we hit all the algos. We'll look at them on the 5K chart later. A lot of them little ones we had in between in the 28 80 range, and supported right off that and bounced accordingly. So all in all, still looks fairly decent and holding on. I know we just had the big issue with the oil. That's going to have some commodity impact. It's interesting how we noticed the beautiful rise in gold leading up to all of this, and we'll look at that in a second. And then sure enough, we have these hostilities in the Gulf, almost as if some people knew what was going to be taking place. I know that it's ripe for conspiracy theories, but it's interesting to see it because at the time that we saw gold rising, there really wasn't a whole lot of justification for it, because we were only seeing what everyone thought was weakening in the U.S., and they were all concerned about a decline in economic output, everything else. But then miraculously, that would not be something that you would generally move to commodities for. That's usually about the global tensions and the potential for unease. So NASDAQ likewise was still a little bit stronger overall, as far as still same rising red, a little bit flatter here, but also positive shakeout. That's got to continue to rise. That just becomes the critical component of it. And as long as we're seeing short-term buyers returning back into it, we can still have a reset of the DOC as we've seen, and it can continue to build on itself. So a little bit fade back in the euro. That's not a surprise. We've already filled this positive extreme right here. It leaves the main one, but sometimes it'll be a lot longer before that one's filled back in, simply because it's the initial breakout move. But in this particular case, we're still well within the range. I mean, look at that, 115.5 is the top side of it. So we're just caught right in the middle between this 111 and 115 range that we've been talking about for quite some time. I still think that there's a good potential that this could break even further, particularly if there continues to be more strife in the EU regarding budgets and everything else. So that's just something to look forward to. And as far as gold goes, you can see that was that massive run up. Of course, the potential for this to skyrocket even further if there's continued escalation within the oil, the Iranian Gulf, all that kind of setup, because those kind of tensions certainly have a potential strong impact. Because if you see oil really go out of control, that will have an impact on the U.S. Growth, inflation, everything else. We had this big consolidation, so here's the 5K. Wasn't a whole lot taking place with that, but what we saw towards the end of the day as we were getting these revisits, right around everything was right around this 2880, just slightly above, slightly below. That's typical of what you see around a key algo point where there's accumulation going on within that. Sometimes either for a short or for a long, but in this particular case, we kept seeing rising DOC red every time we were getting it, and they retested it one time right as those hostilities were taking place, but it was immediate rebound, and we broke out past the previous range right there. Positive extremes at the most recent ones. So even if we get a little fluff back into it, I would expect that we're still going to get close back to that 29, and really that 2905 would be more pertinent target number to be keeping an eye out for. And this is kind of what I was talking about from our 50K when it sold out here. I said oftentimes if this isn't going to be more dramatic and is able to hold its support, it kind of flattens out and builds. And right there, you know, the retrace to that 50% as we flattened out, sort of creating a reset, which is, you know, positive and all. And you can see the shakeout went all the way to zero. And so you're still relatively at the same high levels with a completely reset shakeout. So no overbought conditions. Whereas if you're looking at oscillators, that they would still be relatively in an overbought condition from a longer term range. So kind of interesting to be able to see that in both the broad viewpoint and then getting in even to the narrow intraday charts. So that is the long and the short of it. You know, again, none of this was anything spectacular to even talk about. It was pretty straightforward. So if we get something interesting, I will certainly put it up. As always, though, trade well. We'll talk to you later.